Hello and welcome to the Wedding Pro podcast, the podcast where we share tips and tricks for wedding vendors and couples, share insight into the wedding world, and share about our experiences. We are Gracie and Angela Felix of Felix Wedding Films. We are so glad you tuned into this week's episode. Now let's get into it. All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Wedding Pro podcast. I am so excited for this episode. We have wedding planner Tasha Bracken of Bracken Events. She has been planning weddings and events for over 20 years. So I'm so excited to hear more about her perspective on the wedding industry, what has changed, what has stayed the same, her stories, just all of the fun stuff. But before we get into the episode, Tasha, could you share a little bit about yourself? Anything that you feel like our viewers and our listeners would like to know?
Yeah. As you said, I've been a wedding event planner for over 23 years. And I've loved the industry. I've loved seeing it evolve. I got kind of started. I was working for a PR firm, and we started doing a lot of events for our clients. They had product launches, and so I would be, working on that, picking out linens, kind of putting together a flow, and just really enjoyed that aspect of it. And decided after doing that for a while that was kind of the path I wanted to pursue. And, I had always had a love for parties growing up. My family, we would, have a lot of dinner parties, or my dad would, and I would help make sauce, and, we always made a Caesar salad. And so it just kind of lighting the candles and getting everything ready, picking out the music was something that I always loved to do. So I always feel like my love of events started at an early age.
Awesome. I love that. And where are you based and where do you normally do your work? Do you do destinations? Is there a specific type of client that you work with a lot?
Yeah, I would say, we are New England based, just outside of Boston. So we do a lot on Cape Cod, Newport. And I would say really kind of the aesthetic that we have grown and kind of worked with our clients on is kind of more of a coastal feel. So lots of blues and greens and lots of venues by the ocean. It's just kind of, I grew up going to Cape Cod, and so it's just an aesthetic that I love, and, has kind of transpired into our clients and kind of what they love. And we do destination. We also do some events in Florida, which also, again, is kind of very much that coastal vibe.
Yeah, I love that. Love a good
Yeah.
coastal wedding.
Yeah.
And I love that. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think there's so much versatility in it. And, you don't have to do the blues. You don't have to do the greens, or, I think so many people kind of feel like, oh, especially on Cape Cod, oh, you have to have hydrangea, but you really don't. There's ways to kind of embrace that without kind of being more traditional.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I feel like if couples come to you and they're like, I don't really want the traditional Cape Cod wedding, I feel like, you have a bunch of vendors, who can do something different, or you can give a different vision. So I think that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it just really, helps with the creativity. I love when a client says that, because it's okay, what can we do that's going to be kind of surprising, but still really has that kind of it's really a relaxed luxury vibe, but, it's just something that doesn't feel, too formal. It doesn't take away from the aesthetics of, the landscape of where you are, but just kind of complements it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I and anyone that looks at your Instagram just can see like how beautiful these events are that you put on. And I love that you had like previous experience, not planning weddings, but planning events, with the
Yeah.
corporate company. Was there like a time where someone was like, "Oh, you plan corporate events. Could you plan my wedding?" Like, how did you get into the wedding industry?
I started really because, I was at the age when my friends were getting married and I had just gotten married. And so, they were asking me for help and, just ideas in terms of like event partners. And so it kind of fell out of that. And I started, primarily focusing on the Cape Cod market, way back, when, and, just kind of grew that. And then obviously living outside of Boston, also focused on, kind of some urban hotel style weddings as well. So very, a lot of versatility.
Yeah. This is about to be a very general question, but I just kind of want to know like what was the industry like 23 years ago, because Angelo and I have been doing this since 2019, so 7 years at this point.
Yeah.
And I mean like 23 years ago, Pinterest wasn't, where you find your inspo. Social media wasn't really where you find your vendors or your inspo. Like what was the industry like right when you were getting in?
Yeah. I mean, I think when someone asks you that question, the first thing is, oh, there wasn't social media, because
Yeah.
that's the biggest, and kind of everybody knows that. But I think just because it is such a big part of our lives these days, but really, and when I think back, um, I was just actually recently cleaning out my office and we literally, when clients would want recommendations for photographers or venues, I mean, we sent out things to them because, email was around, but it was still kind of a new, way to communicate. And so we would send packets to them with
Mhm.
with a letter and, here, please find the enclosed. And they would get it and they would look at it. Um, so the process was, I would say took a lot more time
Yeah.
than it does
Mhm.
today. Um,
Yeah.
and there wasn't the access to event partners. I was just looking at some statistics and the um, I think the stat was, the it's grown from 400,000 to 600,000 just event partners in the
Wow.
industry from 2001.
Mhm.
So there's a lot more of us in the industry.
Yeah.
Um, and then the industry itself has grown from like 65 billion to 100 billion.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
it's definitely, industry that's grown. And I think that's
Yeah.
kind of one of the biggest things that I've seen. And then again, just how, the planning process has evolved. Uh,
Mhm.
you know,
Oh
having,
yeah.
easily being able to like send, um, you know, recommendations to clients, preparing beautiful design proposals and things like that, which
Mhm.
were things you never really had a chance to do in the past.
Yeah.
Um, and I think from a design standpoint, um, if you had a beautiful arrangement and a pretty linen, that was luxury, and now um, there's so much more detail that goes into, you know, the decor and the design.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Do you feel like so 23 years ago, obviously you can't just tell a client, "Oh, look at these 3 photographers, these 3 videographers on social media. Do you like them?" You're having to send out like a whole like booklet, showing them their portfolio, all the things. With that, do you feel like back then it was easier for clients to trust you because it was just like they had to trust you to find the photographers? Do you feel like it's harder now because there's just so many on social media, or opposite?
Yeah, I mean, I think, um, there's it's definitely recently, I'm like on the Reddit boards and all of that. And, you do hear a lot about the trust and, you know,
Mhm.
clients, kind of, um, not fully trusting planners
Yeah.
and, feeling like they're upcharging and all of that.
Mm.
And I think, that is because there's just so much information out there and a lot of it is factually inaccurate or there's inaccurate parts of it. Um,
Mhm.
so I think there was maybe a little bit more trust because there wasn't such a broad base to choose from. But I
Mhm.
think now, uh, um, you know, one of our main jobs when we are working with a client is to put them, match them with the right person. And I think
Mhm.
because there are so many um, options that it's overwhelming for them.
Yeah.
So if we can gain that trust, then they're going to feel much better about you know who they're working with
Mhm. Yeah.
because they don't want to they don't want to have to sift through 50 pages of photographers when you do a Google
Mhm.
search.
Oh yeah. It can be so overwhelming. I mean, just like thinking back to our wedding, it was a lot. We had decision fatigue, just analysis
Yeah,
paralysis, all the things. It's very stressful.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think you didn't have as much of that 23 years ago because
Mhm.
you didn't know what you didn't know, and now I think you still don't know what you don't know. But
Mhm.
again, there's all that information out there. So I think people are educating themselves, which is great.
Mhm.
But, they have to also take everything they read and see with
Yeah.
a grain of salt and really trust, the event partners they're working with.
Mhm. Yeah. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that, about like the couple's experience, like back, maybe not just 23 years ago, but maybe like even 15 years ago, 10 years ago versus now. Like, do you feel like your couples or just couples in general are like more stressed now because there's just so many options and like social media to compare themselves to in their wedding? Do you feel like that has
Yeah.
changed a lot?
Yeah, I do. I think there is a lot more. I mean, I think, planning a wedding has always been stressful, but now, in addition to just, kind of working with families and making sure, trying to keep everybody happy and, you know, traditions and all of
Mhm.
that. But now on top of that, there is y- you know, advent of social media and now people are seeing things. So everybody wants everything. And they
Mhm.
also feel like they have to keep up
Yeah.
and, and do things, um, like because they've seen it or, because they
Mhm.
think it's really fun. Um, and so they're kind of cramming all this stuff into their wedding. And,
Yeah.
in the end, what's most important is that it's a time with family and friends and you
Mhm.
are creating an experience for your guests that's really special.
Mhm. Yeah, I completely agree. And so right now, 23 years later, you're obviously planning very beautiful luxury multi-day events. I imagine, when you first started 23 years ago, maybe you weren't planning luxury events, but maybe you saw them. Do you feel like there's like a big difference in the luxury events back then versus now? Or do you feel like they all have like a similar theme or a similar just like heartbeat of the event?
Yeah, I mean, I think, aesthetic trends come and go, and they get recycled. I think, you know, our clients tend to be more traditional and not really following the trends, and they want
Mhm.
things, that they feel will stand the test of time. And one of the things that we love is to, have an event that we've done 15 years ago that you would feel like it was today.
Mhm.
So, um, I think that's one of the things. I think one of when looking back, just in terms of luxury events and all that, there's so many more event partners that we're working with now than we did. Um, we've got lighting, we have, custom builds, we now have, cinematographers, content creators. So you can have an event where you're working with, you know, 15 to 20 event partners.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that really changes our role as a planner, and having to kind of manage all all of the things that are happening.
At Felix Wedding Films, we believe every part of the client experience matters, from the first conversation to the moment a couple watches their wedding films for the first time. That's why we love VidFlow. After spending countless hours creating an elevated experience for our couples and curating a beautiful film gallery, we want the delivery experience to feel just as special. VidFlow gives photographers and filmmakers a beautiful, branded way to share their work, making it easy for couples to stream, share, and enjoy their memories on any device, even their TV. Because great work deserves a great delivery experience. Get your first 10 gigabytes of upload for free at vidflow.co/theweddingpropodcast to try out the platform and deliver your first gallery. Yeah, I imagine that, 20, 23 years ago, you probably weren't working with as many cinematographers. And then
Yeah,
nowadays, it's obviously very common. Not every couple hires a videographer, but they should.
yeah, yeah,
But
no,
with, the rise of social media and just the internet advancing so much, email, all that. Obviously, we can imagine it's so much easier for planners to get connected with different vendor partners. But how did you find different vendors back then in the beginning of your career? What if someone said, "Oh, I don't actually like these vendors' style. Do you have something different?" How did you find someone new?
I mean, it really was networking. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, going to um, different events, um, a lot of one-on-one like lunches and things like that. And it really, I don't want to say they were interviews, but it was almost like you were kind of like saying, how does this person work? And uh, what's their process? And seeing if that kind of fit with, your clients. Because
Mm-hmm.
there really wasn't, again, websites were just kind of becoming a thing. So you did have a little bit of that, but most people's websites at that time were pretty basic.
Yeah.
Um, so there was a lot more face to face communication, phone calls,
Mm-hmm.
and I think also just using the network you've created to find people like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
do you know anybody who does this? Or, and then really trying to make sure you vet them, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess that is still something that's important these days, networking. Obviously, there are other ways to find vendors, as we all know, but we've definitely found a lot of value in networking and just growing our community. So it's interesting to know that, that's not a new thing. It's been around
No, yeah. Yeah, I think
yeah.
just it's just taken a different shape, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of how you network.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm not going to as many of like those large
Mm-hmm.
networking events. I'm kind of doing more, one-on-one, and so in some ways it's going back to that a little bit, like really,
Yeah.
whether it's over Zoom or getting together with somebody for coffee or a glass of wine, like just really, developing that one-on-one relationship. Because I've always found it hard to go to those events and there's so many people and you talk to someone for 5 minutes and say hi and,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't really aren't really able to have a in-depth conversation with them.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total
Yeah.
sense. Um, yeah, so like I said, Angelo and I have been doing this for 7 years, but we didn't even know networking was a thing until 3 years in. And once we
Yeah.
started networking and like making friends, we're like, wow, this is like a whole new world. We just were, it was just
Yeah.
ourselves and our team, and that was it. It was kind of lonely for a while. And then all of a sudden, it
Yeah.
just opened up like a whole new world of friends, referrals, events, which,
Yeah.
I love events. I'm a very social person.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, and I think one thing too that's kind of stayed the same, but again evolved as well is for planners, venues have always been a huge source of referrals. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the same. I think it was just, back then it was again more of, okay, can I come in and meet with you and, you know, give you some insight into how we work and our process, and I can learn more about your venue and things like that. Where so much now, is done by email or, even just your social media. Um,
Mm-hmm.
People reaching out and saying, hey, I saw this wedding you did. You know, we have a similar venue, or things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd love to talk about venues really quick. I know that
Yeah,
at least nowadays, it's very common for a lot of venues to want to do everything in house. They want to have their coordinator, they want to do all the things, which, I have my own opinions about that. But
yeah.
was that like a common thing back 23 years ago, or was it like, no, we actually need an outside planner to come in to help this couple? Like, were venues trying to do it all, or is that like a new thing?
I think when I started, wedding planner, event planner was such a new category that I don't think there was much thought about it. It was like, okay, this person, this client has an event planner.
Mm-hmm.
This one doesn't. I would say, I don't have statistics, but I would probably say back then there were probably fewer people that hired a planner,
Mm-hmm.
just because there wasn't the level of complexity that you see now
Mm-hmm.
that really
Yeah.
requires someone. Um, but I think, even for the larger events then, it was like, oh, yes, you should have a planner.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's that they were trying to do it all. I think it was just a new thing. And
Mm-hmm.
some embraced it and said, oh, wow, here's someone that can be a partner with us. And, you know, as a venue manager, I don't have to feel like I have to do everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. With like a wedding planner being somewhat of a new concept when you started, did you get any like pushback? Was anyone like, why would I need a planner? Like, I know people still say it these days, but,
Yeah.
for any event that is going to be somewhat large scale, we all know you need a planner. But did you get any
Yeah.
pushback in the beginning?
Not really. I feel like, those that were hiring someone kind of knew what they needed.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think the role of a planner has definitely evolved. I think, back then the biggest thing was, okay, help me find, a photographer, help me find a band, put that all together for me, and then
Mm-hmm.
kind of be there that day.
Yeah.
And I think in some cases that's still the majority of what people feel a planner does, but there's so much more now in terms of just, because one of the big things that's really I've seen change in the industry is now the weddings they're weekends.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're not just planning the wedding, you're planning a rehearsal dinner, a welcome party, maybe activities,
Mm-hmm.
like a tournament, a golf tournament, or a tennis match, or things like that that people are incorporating into their wedding weekend. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's just a lot more to
Yeah.
coordinate.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Yeah, I'd love to talk more about wedding weekends. We love wedding weekends for so many reasons, even just like from a videography standpoint, since that's obviously what we do. having more memories to preserve for them for years to come, maybe having more speeches on the rehearsal dinner instead of wedding day for better logistics, just like so many things. But I'd love to know, like, when did you start seeing that shift for couples wanting more wedding weekends? Was it like kind of surprising, or was it like, oh yeah, for sure, I'll do that?
Um, it's definitely been an evolution. I think it started probably 6 or 7 years ago with clients wanting to like, oh, could you help us, just finalize the details of our rehearsal dinner. Simple flowers, all that working. A lot of times it was with the florist that was doing the flowers for the wedding, and it was like, okay, and then, you know, coordinating, like, oh, we want to have some speeches, and there wasn't a lot of decor as part of it. That wasn't really a thought. It was more about the food and just having an opportunity to kind of meet with the immediate families before, and they were much smaller. I
Mm-hmm.
would say 15, 20 people. Now I would say the average rehearsal dinner that we do is probably like 60 to 70 people. So, and then, that kind of shifted. Um, I think kind of before the welcome party, there was the after party too.
Yeah.
Like that became a big thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, we want to do, after party. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then, then it was like, oh, we want to, people are coming into town early. So, after the rehearsal dinner, we want to do a welcome party or something, where we gather people together for drinks and maybe some light appetizers, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Y- and then the decor kind of was elevated with rehearsal dinners, like, oh, let's, bring in a linen and create a different, I think the most important thing about um, wedding weekends is that you're creating experiences for your guests.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you want it to feel cohesive but different.
Yeah.
So I look at it, I'm a big purse person. So I look at, I'm like, it's like Louis Vuitton, but they have many different products. So like there's,
Mm-hmm.
their purses, their shoes, and then their ultra luxury, like bags, so
Mm-hmm.
it's the same brand. So it's the same, obviously, wedding and all that, but you're giving different experiences, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
important. So that's different food, different, maybe different music, maybe, you know, um, the welcome party has a DJ or a calypso band or something like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then the wedding has a band. And I think that's really the key to a successful wedding weekend.
Yeah. I love the word experience because obviously, you want your wedding to be beautiful and like all that fun stuff. You want beautiful design, but ultimately the experience is a part of that. It's a part of the design. It's a part of how the
Yeah.
timeline is made to be seamless. It's a part of, you know, how much time is allocated here so that you don't feel stressed or rushed or just all
Yeah.
the things. So that's a big reason why we love wedding weekends, because I feel like it allows the couple and their loved ones to not cram everything into one, wedding day, which is like not even a full day, They get to have
Yeah.
rehearsal dinner, welcome party, maybe they have a farewell brunch, all those fun events to like spend more time with their loved ones. So that's why I love them, but I'd love to know,
Yeah.
like, why do you love them? Why do you love planning them? Why should a couple have a multi-day wedding weekend?
Well, I think it's a lot of the things you just said. It's allowing, your family and the couple to spend more time with those people closest to them and not feel like, oh wow, I didn't get to see this person at my wedding and talk to them. And so, you're creating these opportunities to really have, again, like we're talking about networking, like, in-depth conversations with people as opposed to just, it used to be, you couples would go around to the tables and say hi to everybody. And they
Mm-hmm.
felt like they had to do that. And that took up so much time during the reception. And
Yep.
they didn't really get to enjoy it. So now with these the wedding weekends, you're able to really spend time and you don't have to go around to the tables. I
Yeah.
mean, couples still do, but it's not like a chore for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that they are doing, during dinner while with people are finishing up eating and maybe, before dancing starts.
Yeah. Yeah. I at our own wedding, we went around to all the tables because we were like, otherwise, on our wedding day, we're not going to be able to talk to everybody, and we want to
Yeah.
at least say hi. We want to thank them for coming. A lot of people came from out of town. We want them to feel appreciated, but I
Yeah.
definitely would have loved if we just had more time to just be relaxed in the environment with them so that we could naturally just have conversations and not feel like,
Yeah.
oh, we're on a time crunch. We got to go to every single table really quick. No in-depth conversations.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes total sense. Wish we would have thought about it for our wedding.
Yeah, I mean, and those are the kinds of things, years ago you didn't really think about. It was just
Yeah.
kind of how things were done. But I think, you know, that's probably a biggest piece I think that has changed in the
Mhm.
industry is that there is a lot more emphasis now on the guest experience and making
Mm.
people
Okay.
feel really, welcomed and, just showing them that you're really happy that they're there.
Mhm.
Um, Because as
Yeah.
much as I love the design aspect of putting a wedding together, I mean, that's probably one of my favorite parts, but
Yeah.
honestly, it really guests remember more of, being greeted with a glass of champagne or maybe, you know, a personal note or, you know, we've had clients who have put pictures with them and each individual guest and,
Mhm.
created like these moments and that just makes people feel special and appreciated.
Yeah, it definitely does. Obviously, we film a lot of weddings. We do attend, a lot of weddings too. But
Yeah.
my favorite that are either ones that we've attended or filmed are always something that has to do with an experience with people. And again, we love details too. We love to capture them, that's like a big thing that we
Yeah.
love. But typically what we're talking about after the wedding day is like, well, it could even be a detail. For example, one of our couples, they framed a picture of every single person that attended their wedding who got married. They framed their like wedding picture, including ours, and they had
Oh
it
my
on like
gosh.
a gallery wall, and people were
Yep.
looking, and like some people were tearing up, and like people were smiling, and that was one of my favorite moments, and I was not even attending, I was filming.
Yeah.
So I just think that like the experience, that couples are more interested in like the guest experience now. I was wondering like
Yeah.
if that was the same back then, but you're saying that they're kind of more aware of it these days, right?
Yeah. I definitely think there's been a shift and it is more at the forefront than just like,
Mhm.
you know, I think before, you know, as complex as wedding planning has always been, I think it was much simpler. Okay, we need flowers, we need a
Yeah.
photographer, we need some food, music, and then it'll be a great time. Like
Mhm.
that's that's it. And I think, again, social media has really
Mhm.
changed that because people can they 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 have access to so much.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of couples are wanting to do something different that they're not seeing on social media, or maybe they did see on social media and they're like, "Oh, I want to, maybe recreate that a little bit." Do
Yeah.
you feel like the like unique requests are kind of more common now, maybe not as common back then before social media was around?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's different aspects like, there's much more creativity, say, around like the escort board where people find their tables. Now there's beautiful, before it was, typically a circular table with a big, beautiful arrangement in the middle and then the cards around it. Now people are doing, different things, keys or, a big board that's like a piece of just, part of the design. Um,
Mhm.
so I think those type of things, um, it's just bringing in the creativity and what they've seen. 'Cause, I mean, we always want clients, they send us photos and stuff, but we always want to know, like, well, what about you? What interests do you have? And how can we
Mhm.
bring that in as an experience so that
Yeah.
people, you know, kind of feel like they're at your wedding and it's not just something you're recreating something that you saw.
Mhm. Yeah. I'd love to know about like the vendor side of things. Like, I know that a lot of our couples really want to get to know us personally and like care about, who's there on the wedding day. Has that always been a thing? Or do you feel like back before social media was around, do you think that affected like how personable or personal they want to be with their vendors? Has that changed at all?
Um, I think yes. I think again because there is access to people's social media that they do want to get to know, and I think a lot of that happens before they even reach out. Like
Mhm.
they're looking at the social media, seeing like, oh, this person likes to do this on the weekends. Like feeling like they know that person a little bit and have a connection before they call. And I think
Yeah.
before I think it was a lot of, the venue saying, here's our list, you know, of 3 event planners or 3 photographers, you know, we suggest you call them. And there really wasn't a way to, research them or gain more information about them.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously it was a norm back then, but nowadays I can't imagine like hiring someone without seeing so much of their portfolio of like
Yeah.
even just like social media, which, that's just a snippet, but like, you know, if you're hiring a photographer, like I would want to see full portfolios and like I would want to get
Yes.
to see like do they seem like a kind person? Do they seem like they're going to work well with my vendors? But,
Yep.
it's so interesting that, it's basically like, "Oh, call them up. Do you like them? Okay, let's hire them."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that really
Yeah.
was, they were taking the recommendations primarily of the
Mhm.
venues, you know,
Yeah.
because that was their source. Like it made it easy. Oh, here's a list.
Mhm.
We don't have to, you know, go searching ourselves to try to find all of this.
Yeah.
So,
Do you feel like it has made it like harder at all for your job as a planner recommending vendors? Because I know that you could recommend vendors who are going to do a great job, they fit the aesthetic, but maybe the client is like, "Oh no, well I saw this other, like let's just say a content creator. I saw this other
yeah.
content creator on social media. I want to hire them." And you're like, "Well, I don't know how they work."
Mm,
How do you
yeah.
feel like it has made it a harder job for you?
Um, in some ways, yes. I mean, I think, like you said, there's so many more options. Um, and if a client comes to us and they say, "Oh, I want to work with this content creator or photographer," we're fine with that. But we let them know that we haven't worked with them before, so we don't, you know, we can't stand behind their work. We're
Yeah.
gonna do a little bit of research and talk with them and you know. Uh, we say we'd like to let you know if we see or feel any red flags, just
Mhm.
so,
That's smart.
um, yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
I think it's to protect us too, because we want them to
Mhm.
know
Yeah.
that you can hire whoever you want, but in the end,
Mhm.
like, if that's your decision. And,
Yeah.
if something goes wrong, we're going to certainly be there to help. But
Mhm.
at that point, it's, you made that decision. So,
Mhm. Yeah. Yep. I feel like obviously I'm not a planner, but I feel like if I was a planner, I would want something like in my contract of, I didn't recommend this person, so I'm not responsible for them.
oh, yeah.
Do
Oh,
you feel like
definitely. You
that's a
have to.
common thing? Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
that's in my agreement. All my
Okay, yeah.
agreements, yeah, yeah.
I didn't know if I was
Nowadays,
just
you have to.
being
Yeah.
extra. Yeah, I agree
No, no.
completely.
Well, I think
Yeah.
because as a planner, we're responsible for so much, and
Mm-hmm.
it would be easy for a client to come back and say, "Oh, this person was horrible, and didn't do a good job." And it's like, well, and honestly, in full transparency, any problem that we've had with an event partner has been ones that the client already had hired,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um,
It happens.
yeah,
We've
yeah,
we've seen it too.
uh, yeah. But there's so
Um,
many great people in the industry, so
yeah,
it's just,
I
yeah,
agree. And there's a lot of us apparently according to the statistic you shared.
yeah, yeah.
Even more
It's
these
amazing
days.
how,
Yeah.
which obviously makes it more of a challenge as well, because now there's
Yeah.
more planners, more photographers, more cinematographers, like vying for everybody's business.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Mhm. Do you feel like with so many years in the industry, do you feel like, we talked about a lot of the changes, but are there certain things that have just remained consistent throughout the years that it's like, oh, planning a wedding 20 years ago versus now, this is something that's basically at every single wedding?
yeah, I mean, I think, you know, every wedding has had a photographer, um, you know, music, whether DJ, bands,
Mhm.
food,
Mhm.
dancing, those core things haven't changed.
Yeah.
And the formalities, at least with most of our clients, like they're still doing like a first dance and the parent
Mhm.
dances. We don't see the garter toss or anything like that anymore, but
Love it. Yeah. Gotta go.
and yeah. And for some, the cake cutting is still a big formality. Though
Mhm.
we see that more of an informal thing now where they're just
Yeah.
kind of doing it for the photos and video, and not really involving the band or making a
Mhm.
big production about it. But so I think those core elements have not changed.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely noticed like a shift in some of the things that you've mentioned, but they've still been at every single wedding. Like, for example, the cake cutting. When we first started, it was like a very huge deal. And nowadays, I am noticing that it's in parentheses on the timeline, like soft cake cutting. So it's like, we're not
Yeah.
announcing it. We're going to cut it. You can film it.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
um,
Exactly.
yeah. I know that earlier you mentioned that like some vendors that weren't as common back then, but are like so much more common now are like lighting, obviously, cinematography. We all know content creation. Are there like any
Yeah.
other vendor categories you can think of that just weren't as popular back then, but are like a staple now?
That's a great question. I'm sure there are. I can't think right now.
I threw a curveball at you.
But yeah, no, I'm just trying to wrap my head around. I mean, I think you mentioned the big ones. Maybe again, like rentals,
Mm,
and all of that goes with it. And I mean, more of like production side. So like
mm-hmm.
building custom bars or building a stage for the band, that kind of thing. Um, you definitely didn't see as much of those type of industries, uh, happening. And now I think, it's a much larger percentage of the weddings are
Mm-hmm.
incorporating that.
Yeah, I definitely see that as well. Being in the industry for 7 years, I don't really have a perspective before then. So for me, it's just normal that all these vendors are around and that we work with them at basically every wedding. So it's just interesting to hear and imagine, like, you know, 23 years ago, this was a little bit different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd love to like talk a little bit about like content creators. Obviously, they're not
Mhm.
new, but they are one of the newest vendors in the wedding industry. Um, do you remember like when you first had a wedding with a content creator? Was it kind of weird for you? Did you adopt it really quickly? Like what as a planner was your perspective in the beginning?
I would say probably 4 or 5 years ago, we worked with our first content creator. Maybe it was 4 years ago. And I think my biggest um, thought was how they're going to work with the cinematographer, as I
Mm-hmm.
think that's so important. And, because while the roles are different, it's obviously both are content driven, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and how do both get what they need without kind of butting heads or like, toppling over each other? So I
Yeah.
think, we always made sure that there was communication before the event, like, and someone agreeing to like kind of be the lead, like, so that
Mm-hmm.
there was that kind of, just understanding of let me get my
Yeah.
shot, then you can get yours, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which in some ways I think is very similar to like when cinematography kind of came into the picture with photographers.
Mm-hmm.
It was like
That's what I
now the
hear.
photographer, yeah, yeah. And so it was like now the photographer is having to, kind of manage another person that's trying to do a very similar thing,
Mm-hmm.
um, but just in a different medium,
Yeah.
so having to work with them.
Yeah. I'm sure that was really interesting, just like thinking back to when photographers were it was just the photographer, no content creator, no videographer. I I am imagine that some photographers might have not really loved that shift, as much as others, but I think that
Yeah,
it's very interesting. I mean, like thinking about when content creators entered the wedding world, obviously it was kind of different for us, but it's like if you're already working well with the photographer, might as well just add the content creator to your team and just communicate and serve the couple
yeah,
well and everything will be okay.
yeah. It is kind of funny on a day, like as a planner, we step back and we see like, it's usually two photographers, two cinematographers, and a content creator. And it's like, wow, look at this, like these people,
Yeah.
ascending on the bride and groom. So, but I think, particularly with content creation, like the couples that want that are pretty media savvy. And so
Mhm.
they're going
Yeah.
to feel comfortable, I think, in front of the camera and with all those people, um,
Yeah.
just kind of being there.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. I think to like our weddings that had multiple media team members, it was
yeah,
always the couples that were like really into the content.
yeah,
But I do, thinking back a few years ago when it wasn't as common to like have multiple videographers, multiple photographers, multiple content creators. I did hear some comments from like guests of saying like, "Wow, there's a lot of people with cameras." So I think
yeah,
that maybe
yeah,
from like the guest side, it's also just like a whole new shift. Do you feel
yeah.
like kind of bringing the guests in, do you feel like anything has shifted from like your perspective when there's multiple media team members? Do you feel like it has impacted the guest experience at all, or do you feel like guests have just kind of like accommodated?
Yeah, I think for the most part, guests have accommodated. I think the thing, the nice thing is that most of the teams we work with are very discreet. And so, I don't think the guests necessarily notice a lot of
Mhm.
times, which I think is great. And that's how it should be. But if they need something or if they want a picture taken, they know where to find you. So I think that's the
Yeah.
balance. Um, one of the things I think I'm so glad that people have moved away from is with video is getting the table shots and having the cinematographer go around and ask the guests questions.
Mhm.
They used to do this on the video, and one, I think it's awkward for the guest, and it just takes up a lot of time. And
Mhm.
in the end, I'm not sure it was something that the couple really needed or wanted.
Mhm. Yeah. That's interesting that that was more
You probably
common.
have never, probably never saw that, but that was big. That was big when
Uh-huh.
video first came out. Was you know everyone was seated at the tables, and they would go around with a bright light and go around
Oh,
to the
yeah.
tables and like, you know, say something to the bride and groom, like
Uh-huh. Okay, yeah. I could see
yeah,
that being a little awkward. 'Cause
yeah,
nowadays we have like a little version of that, but it's for couples that want it, but it's
yeah.
informal. It's like we're walking throughout the day, we're in the bridal suite, maid of honor is right there having fun, and she like wants to say something on camera for the bride and groom, and
Oh,
it's more like fun like that. But
yeah,
I could see that being
exactly.
really awkward, just like bright light. Hey, I'm going to interview you.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And also
That's
too, like
funny.
photographers used to do that. Like they would get shots of each table.
Not my favorite thing, taking,
Yeah,
having pictures taken of people while they're like eating all that stuff. I've seen that before and,
it's
glad we're
yeah,
getting past that.
yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, I do want to wrap up soon, but I kind of
Yeah.
want to hear a little bit about like your best advice for vendors and also for couples. Just like, you've been planning weddings and events for 23 years. What is your best advice for vendors for like longevity in the industry? And then you've planned multiple hundreds of weddings at this point. What's your best advice for couples planning their wedding?
Okay. So first for like event partners, I think really focus on your process and how you do things. Make it easy for clients to sign an agreement, pay the deposit, um, give them a timeline of what needs to happen and when. Um, using like, keep up with the technology. I think that's the biggest thing I can say is, not necessarily reinvent yourself, but just understand what clients today versus years ago are expecting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and, don't get stuck in doing things the way you've always done them. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's one of the biggest things I've learned that's helped me continue to grow my business after so many years, is embracing the technology, embracing how clients are communicating. Text is becoming huge now with clients, which, I don't love or hate. I think it's just a different format.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to embrace that, but also making sure that like, we're still keeping a lot of the important stuff by email so that it's
Yeah.
trackable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and for clients, honestly, I would say, once you hired your team, just trust them and that they know what they're doing and that they're going to give you the best advice. Because, you know, more than likely, the people that you've hired are amazing professionals. They've been doing this for a long time and they're going to, you know, want to give you the best advice to make it simple and keep the process fun. Um, so that would be
Yeah.
that's my advice to couples.
I think both your advice to vendors and to couples is really, really great. I would say the same as well. I would echo that. Obviously, don't have 23 years to back me up, but I can totally see that. And just like what you're saying about vendors, just like being flexible and, with the technology and all that, I can just think back to like
Yeah.
when credit card payments weren't like as common for a vendor to offer, like maybe you
Right.
have to pay by check or by cash or whatever it was, and a lot of our friends were like, oh no, we're not going to do credit cards. It was like a big deal that we were offering credit card payments. So
Yep.
um but
Yeah.
yeah, just a small example and of being flexible and learning as we go.
Yeah. Yeah. I think and just remembering too to like when you're working with a team that you're all there for the same reason to,
Mhm.
really create a great day for the clients and experience. And
Yeah.
so, we should all just be working together. It's not each
Yeah.
individual.
Mhm. I completely agree. I think most of the guests that we've had on the podcast have said something of that sort, which is probably why
Yeah.
we, mesh well with them and invited them on. But it's so true.
Yeah.
Just like having a team player mindset, like, you know,
Yeah.
you've been in the industry for 23 years. So obviously that has gotten you very far. And it's definitely something that, we want to learn from. And hopefully our guests who are vendors also want to learn from you as well.
Yeah.
But
Well,
before
thank you
we
for
wrap it
having me.
up,
Yes.
yeah, I know that we talked about so many different things and I really enjoyed like just hearing your perspective and like your story. Do you feel like there's anything else that you want to share with our listeners? It could be geared towards couples or vendors, and it could be totally random. Anything else?
Um, wow. I think I would say for event partners that I think we're all really lucky to be in this industry and be a part of such special moments. We just recently did a graduation party and it was quite large and, but the parents came up to me and was like, "Ah, I can't believe we're doing this. This is crazy for a graduation party." And then they're like, but we're going to have such great memories. And I think that's one thing both couples and event partners need to remember is that, you know, it's more than just,
Hmm.
filming the wedding. It's more than just helping plan and design it. It's really about creating these moments that people are going to remember for the rest of their lives when they're sitting around the table at Thanksgiving or, a holiday. Like, oh, remember, this great celebration we did, and you were doing this, and this happened.
Yeah.
It just brings back all those memories. And I think it's important to really remember that that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I just got goosebumps with you explaining it like that. Cuz we have a daughter and so I'm just like now I feel like I'm even more emotional having an almost 4-month-old and thinking like,
Oh,
maybe one day
congratulations!
she'll have a wedding. Thank you. And I'm just
Yeah,
thinking
of
like,
course.
the mother of the bride right now is like emotional and having a beautiful time at the wedding and I'm just like, "Oh, I love that like she's going to have all these memories with her daughter and maybe one day I'll
Yep.
get that with my daughter." So I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Well,
now that we've had a great conversation, I would love for you to share where our listeners can connect with you on social media, your website, if they either want to reach out and see if you're available for their wedding or if they just want to connect and say, hey, where can they find you?
yeah. Yeah, I would love that. So our Instagram is Bracken Events. You can find us there and on Facebook. And our website is tashaofbrackenevents.com.
Awesome. And we will absolutely include that in the show notes as well. Well, awesome. Tasha, thank you so much for your time. This was an awesome
Ah,
episode, and I hope to connect with you again very soon.
yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Wedding Pro podcast. If you found this episode helpful, we would love it for you to share with a fellow vendor or someone who's getting married soon. Your support means the world to us and helps us reach more people in this amazing industry. We'll see you next time.